When humanity arrived on the galactic stage, there were mixed feelings. A third of the galaxy effectively started making plans for conquest and colonization because, of course they did. A third of the galaxy sent every merchant, salesman and sleazeball they could find towards the humans to make as much money as possible. A third of the galaxy at last simply just shrugged and carried on, pretending nothing happened. After a few cycles they stayed in their lane and we in ours. Most communications happening within digital or distanced communication. Then we saw their ships, and collectively screamed for help to gods that weren't there. It happened about 3 months, as humans call it, and the first of many trade caravans entered human space. The Katanashti, a race of creatures similar to humans in structure, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, deemed closest to the humans themselves for the sake of appearing relatively friendly. They were gone for the human equivalent of about a week. When they docked to distribute and quarantine goods for trade, the service technicians were horrified. They wandered about as normal, operating as usual, but their faces, trapped, frozen in a permanent grimace as if they had just seen the most terrifying thing in the history of the universe. They distributed goods, hauled biologicals to calling, but the entire time their faces were just stuck with that expression. It felt like talking to an eldritch horror that encountered an even worse eldritch horror. When they spoke, they either did so in wobbly tones because they couldn't speak normally, or their faces spontaneously contorted in horrifying ways to allow them to speak. The shock wore off, apparently, but they refused to actually speak of what they found. They presented recordings, reluctantly. Their reasoning was that there are no words to describe the sights we saw or things we heard, for none of them can be believed by any, no matter how warped their minds. We have photographs and recordings, but you will believe them as false as the claims made by your local politicians. We did view the media. It looked fake. It seemed fake. It felt fake. But we knew better, and the concept terrified us. Human ships were massive, absurdly sized and better armed than any ship had any right to. Our largest ship in the Grand Council was 800 meters long. The vessels we saw reached upwards of 2 kilometers, with some images showing ships estimated in the range of over 20 kilometers in length. Human warships outclassed every ship in the galaxy by magnitudes beyond absurdity. We needed to find out why. So that's why I found myself, terrified and worried, sitting in a private freighter carrying databanks full of historical data and economic trade data on my way to the closest human star system. It was 2 months after the traders left their mark on us, and I have effectively been sent as a sacrifice, carrying everything we could afford to give so we can ask them to just leave us alone. I entered the star system, a place known as Arcadia Prime. My soul evaporated from my body as I saw the sight of a dozen of those ridiculous gargantuan behemoths casually wandering about the star system. I had exited slipspace and found myself face to face with a ship over 2 kilometers long. In comparison, my small freighter was only 110 meters. I came to a full halt and broadcasted my intentions, requesting somewhere to dock. I was genuinely surprised when I was actually given permission to dock with the main station. The station itself was beyond massive, encompassing a massive ring right around the entire moon it was orbiting. These humans had no concept of scale. It's genuinely absurd. The tug ship that towed me into the dock was bigger than my ship. The whole situation was absurd. Why were these ships so massive? I felt the heft of my ship connecting to the gravity tethers and power down unnecessary subsystems. I headed to the airlock and secured my cargo. Just as I was done, I saw a ship, similar in size to one of our cruisers, enter the star system and dock next to me. For once, the only thing about it that was scary was the absurd quantity of cannons on it. It was actually a reasonable size. I heard a chime. Someone was at the door. I headed to the airlock and was greeted by the human dock supervisor and a soldier carrying a primitive but still dangerous projectile weapon. "Hello, can we help you?" he said. Humans. Very odd creatures. I towered over him easily. He was half my size, and he didn't look like much in terms of physical capacity. But clearly I was missing something. I reached into my jacket and presented my Merchant's Guild ID badge, as well as my Scholar's Guild badge. I am Varus Vathrakis of the Lumini Confederacy. I am here on behalf of my master to negotiate, I replied calmly. Oh, cool. Negotiate what, though? I have databanks full of research data, exploration data, and other such things of interest. It's customary to let newcomers know of national borders, historical archives, and various other things, so we figured we would skip the queue and help you out before we have any incidents, I said. Well, hot damn, that's useful. I guess you want something similar in return, huh? Faction data, trade hub routes, that kind of thing? He asked, as more humans began to filter out to look at my ship. Oh, that would be most useful indeed. I'm sure we can come up with other things. Who are they? I said, pointing to the humans in fancy uniforms and heavy weapons that just wandered in. Oh, that's the system commander, military liaison. Probably be better if you talk to him than me. Should I start unloading your cargo, or... Certainly. Let me just open everything up, I said, using my iron plunk computer to open up the cargo hold. The ship's side opened up, revealing the cargo. Boxes, carefully stacked with storage disks, hard drives, and whatever semi- or fully compatible hardware we could find, with everything we could afford to put in them. This should be everything you could possibly ask for. We did our best to match your connections from what little we knew, but it shouldn't be hard for you to adapt the equipment, I think, I remarked calmly, as I directed him to the door. And what exactly is in this cargo? A gruff voice from nearby spoke suddenly. Data, information, galactic trade routes, known pirate bases, stock market data, historical archives of all recorded history, a few things like that. Basically, all you really need to get yourself started, make things less, how do I say, awkward in future? Language databases, medical needs, dietary requirements, nothing definitive, but enough to get yourself started, and enough to prevent you from accidentally starting a war or two, I replied somewhat smugly. Well, hot damn, that's useful, the gruff voice said. I looked to face this voice, and the sight nearly made me jump out of my skin. 3 types of humans, the small, normal-looking ones like the dockyard manager and the officer, a human that was about half a meter taller, wearing a heavy powered exosuit, and a human piloting what appeared to be a heavy personal mech that was taller than me. Yeah, we figured as much too, I meekly managed to say. My name is Captain Tarkin. I command that ship next door and the armed forces in this sector. Welcome to Arcadia Station, he said, presenting a hand. I took it and shook it with him. A customary greeting among humans, as we learn from the Kata Nashti's experiences. I certainly hope the data will be helpful, but as a matter of course, can I receive the same in return? My master would love to know more about you. And the galaxy at large, of course, but that comes later, I asked. Of course. We actually already have an introductory package for diplomats and whatnot. I'll send it through to start, and we can compile the rest for later. It only has basic stuff. Language, customs, medical data, stuff like that. Faction lines will be more important for you, though. I'll send it through. You got a wireless frequency we can use to transmit secure data? He asked. I nodded and pulled out a datapad and showed him. He reached up to his ear. Bridge, you getting this? He said. Copy that, sir. Can see the open hub. Firewalls are active. Checking compat. I'm in. Done. Basic package released, plus some extra. And I'm out. Connection resecured, I heard a voice on the radio say. Indeed, there it was. A new file stored on my ship's computer core. I had logs of an external communications link downloaded a secure file. My ship's own firewalls checked it for potential harmful code or spyware before translating the data. All clean. Humans are as good as their word, apparently. My goodness, that was fast. How'd you operate so quickly? I asked. We have to know how to work fast, and we have advanced systems to compensate. We've had a lot of experience, shall we say, to figure out how to do things with efficiency, he replied calmly. He nodded to the station dock supervisor, the one I met. The station suddenly roared to life with energy, and station crews flooded out of their quarters with trundling heavy machinery. The soldiers around the captain moved into defensive positions around the area to keep everything in line. I took the chance to move to the viewing port next door and looked at the human ship on station. It was, at least compared to the rest of the ships in the area, quite small. Beauty, isn't she? SMC Caldera class command cruiser, the Quad C as we named it. Command cruiser? That would explain the heavy shielding and large number of communications antennae, I remarked, pointing out the obvious signs of various pieces that looked similar to galactic norms. Well spotted. See that one? He said, pointing to a strange but larger ship in the distance. This one had a flat top and looked open. Large hangar bay? Mostly point defense and heavy shielding? Strange design, but I recognize the idea. Is that a drone-carrying ship of some kind? I asked. He nodded, smiling. Sort of. Some carry drones, but most are carrying piloted fighter craft. Aircraft carriers, we call them. Big, expensive, but extraordinarily dangerous in the right hands. I take it you have drone ships too? Oh, indeed. The Vakarian used them like the plague. It was most useful during the war in the Outer Rim several centuries ago. Let me guess. Big bad Empire or something shows up with big massive guns, but completely neglects or forgets the concept of anti-fighter defense. It was one of those wars where the bad guy had huge guns, but could only hit big targets. So the drone swarms put them in their place sharpish, he said, looking up at me. I looked at him, genuinely surprised. An excellent deduction. That's exactly what happened, I replied. Clearly these humans were a lot more knowledgeable than they appeared. Yeah. Okay now, what about that one, he said, pointing at a new ship, a strangely static one that seemed to be split down the middle. Engines are too small for ship-to-ship combat. Shield arrays are a bit small, but... Seems all it has are point defense and what looks like a spinal-mounted cannon? So some kind of long-range artillery ship, perhaps? I replied, scratching my shin. Good call. Sentry cruisers. Effective range of around 45,000 kilometers. That one's on the larger scale, he replied, with a growing sense of pride. Ah, I see. We have a similar concept. Ships of the line. Their heavy Mega Maser batteries can melt anything within that range too. I do recognize that ship, of course. Destroyer class, unmistakable. Light armament, high maneuverability. And despite the difference in technology, anyone can recognize a torpedo array when he sees one, I said, pointing at a very distinct class of ship. It seems we have some similarities with the rest of the galaxy in terms of combat potential. There might be some room here for some interesting partnerships, he remarked, leaning against the glass. In terms of technology, you are unique in that you still use ballistic munitions and missile tech, but it appears at least to be on par with the rest of the galaxy. With 10 Confederacy at least. I see uniformity, at least in some aspects, to your ship designs. The military and utility ones anyway. Sharp corners, straight lines, heavy artillery. Anyone with any concept of military doctrine can see we are effectively on even footing, I replied. It would seem so. Then one of those ridiculous behemoths appeared, the station shuddering slightly as it appeared out of slipspace. It hovered above us gently, obscuring the light of the local star as its FTL drive spooled down. I took a close look at it. 1.6 kilometers long, shaped like a sword or blade of some kind, triangular and sharp-edged, smooth surface bristling with hundreds of cannons. A structure atop the hull, clearly the bridge. The shield shimmered and shuddered with the sheer energy radiating from it. I watched in awe as a swarm of tugboats and tow vessels latched onto it and dragged it to a port. And then there are the outliers. These ridiculous behemoth ships you have. Doctrine only goes so far, I suppose, I remarked, shocked at the sight. Covert drive yards Venator-class Star Destroyer. Those aren't part of the military fleet. Well, most of them aren't, he remarked casually with a shrug. Some fanboys art project. Pretty, though. What even are they, and why are they so big? What doctrine could they possibly belong to? I asked. The saving those who cannot be saved otherwise doctrine? He looked at me with a strange, knowing smirk. I just looked at him, asking wordlessly for an explanation. He shrugged. Look, I am aware we are newcomers, and there's probably a lot of people preparing to invade us, so I'm going to tell you what you want to know and make this short for both of us. We've also done our own research. You have a dedicated military, so do we. In terms of strategy, we have similarities. In terms of doctrine, we have similar policies. Your military has standardized ships that fit into this doctrine, so are ours. In terms of warfare between us, it will be down to numbers and strategy, both of which we have in good measure. He spoke calmly, as his soldiers wandered about near us. So, with this in mind, be careful who you piss off. They may be independent, and we have our own petty squabbles, but when it comes to humans, when you attack one of us, you attack all of us. The Stakiko learned that lesson the hard way, he said, smiling at me in a way that made me genuinely uncomfortable. The Stakiko? Who are they? The operative term is were. They were our first contact, and they made the mistake of trying to attack us first. They wiped out one of our colonies on the border. They decided they wouldn't surrender, so we put them all down. Those ships, they know what the word marbling means in a warfare context. Ever seen a world hit with so many nuclear bombs, not even cosmic bacteria can survive on its surface? They did. Now they're gone. We asked for friendship, they wanted conquest. We handed them their own asses on a silver platter. Get that? He asked, his tone of voice terrifyingly grim. Understood. We stood there in silence, watching the massive warship unload cargo onto the station. So, those ships, why are they so large, and what are they for? Who owns them? As somber as the mood was, my curiosity needed to be sated. Does your species understand the concept of uploading one's consciousness into computers? He asked. Of course. It's generally considered impossible or impractical, so it isn't done. Those ships are our response to that problem. Fun fact, each and every one of the lost ships has 60% of its volume dedicated to data core processors and reactor space, because every one of those ships has a human mind uploaded into its core. They are so big because they need to be, he remarked calmly. Let me put it to you this way. Life deals you a bad hand, an accident, a genetic imbalance, a disease, combat wound. What do you do when you lose your arms? You get them replaced with cybernetics. Your spine gives out? Get an exoskeleton installed. Legs gone? Wheelchair, then cybernetics. Sometimes there's just nothing you can do. Originally we had ideas on uploading people to the internet, but they would just vanish into the ocean of idiocy. We have this thing, you see, where it makes us sick to see the waste of life. These ships are a way to preserve what little life those unfortunates have left, he said, a tear rolling down his cheek. I let him gather himself and just finish his explanation. So, humans, born from a death world, full of death and such. We've had entire generations of people we just can't save no matter how hard we try. And it hurts. It hurt more than we care to admit, just standing there unable to do anything while those we love faded away. So one day, one man came up with a solution. He started his own shipbuilding project. In it, he used probably the same hardware you use, to upload the mind of his leukemia-stricken son into a starship he built himself. He became the first of the lost. That boy became a part of the ship. His AI core integrated better with the boy's memories than expected. Suddenly, this kid, who was bedridden for weeks on end, now had full access to the entire universe. There are no words to describe how happy that kid felt. Even though his body was gone, he had the entire world at his fingertips, and then some. Parents, brothers, families, even those who had nothing charged in and begged to have the same. And so here we are. Most of the ships are of the Lost One's own designs, all built by materials they mined, refined, and manufactured themselves. It was like giving a man who never walked in his life 6 legs and a mountain to climb. I can't tell you how satisfying it is to get someone from their last breath in a hospital ward, then hear them screaming in joy and terror the first time they experience FTL travel inside their new body, he said, again with a tear rolling down his cheek. I could barely fathom what I was hearing. The ships weren't just ships, but humans had taken the concept of memory transfer to an extreme that nobody would have ever thought of. Okay, that is impressive. But why so heavily armored, and so massively huge? I asked, still wondering. They just like feeling powerful, and big, or something. Imagine if you were always short and ignored. Suddenly you had the loudest voice in the room on the tallest podium. How would you feel? Probably pretty badass. We allow it, so long as they make it all themselves. All these dry docks, built just for them. By them. This whole thing was basically our way of overcompensating for the ones we couldn't save. Sorry we couldn't save your life, Benny, so here, have a starship. Go explore the universe. Yeah. He just shrugged. I see. Would I be correct under the assumption that what were they? Stakiko? They are the reason those ships are so heavily armed? I asked. Yep. Stack invasion pissed off all the Lost, and they armed up faster than we could beg them not to, and put them in their place right sharpish. Honestly, when the Lost got into the war, It wasn't so much a war as it was target practice. Turns out when you have limitless processing power, access to all known written knowledge, and no laws or rules to stop you in the cold ether of nowhere, you can build some terrifyingly scary weaponry. Such as the wormhole displacement cannon, mounted on the very ship we are looking at. My blood pressure suddenly skyrocketed, and I started feeling dizzy. Did he say wormhole displacement cannon? You mean a theoretical device conceived by madmen and idiots during fever dreams that creates micro wormholes inside targets that effectively teleports pieces of your enemy into oblivion? That wormhole displacement device? I asked, my skin turning pale. Yeah, that. And that isn't even the worst thing these people have come up with. But who's going to stop them? Frankly, we don't want to. They are happy, and that's all we care about, really. It just so happens they can kill eldritch gods and pan-dimensional abominations like that one great devourer in New Sarajevo that one time. But anyway, he trailed off and casually wandered away. My jaw dislocated from the shock, my own face contorting into an expression of terrified awe. I suddenly understood why the Catenacci had returned so hideously deformed. Not just because of the size and weaponry of their empire, but also due to the fact these freaks had no real limitations when it came to tech or weapons. I got the human archive data, which by itself contained a significantly more detailed version of what was really going on. There was no way we could ever fight this. We needed to close ranks and send diplomats to human space. The sooner we can make friends, the better for us all.